Hi, and welcome back to What's Next. This is where we explore the personal and professional transitions that really shape who we're becoming. This podcast is really about moments when life, leadership, and work invite us to pause and ask, what am I learning? What am I leaving behind? And what am I ready to step into next? Today, I'm so happy that I'm joined with Crystal Bell. Crystal's career journey from business analyst to senior executive leadership reflects growth, resilience, and the ability to lead through change. So welcome, welcome, welcome. So excited you're here. Before we dive into any deeper end questions, what I want to hear from you is a little bit about you, a little bit about your journey, and then in addition to that, maybe why you're here. So go for it.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. I'm so glad to be here on the podcast today, chatting with you. And so, just a smidge about my journey. My career path, like I think many, was not a straight line. It was a wild doodle of a 2-year-old and somewhere that I never thought I would end up. But I actually started professionally thinking I was going to be a music teacher. So I went to
And you did
college
that
for.
for a
And I
while,
did, yeah,
didn't you?
I
Yeah,
did,
yeah.
and I
Okay, yeah.
loved it.
Okay, good.
And
Yeah.
I also directed choirs for 6 years after I left the teaching industry, and still very passionate. I sing on my own. I do my private voice lessons for myself because it's just always been a part of my life.
Nice.
But moved into went to graduate school because I was just terribly freaked out about not having a job in the future. Working in the electives in a school can be really stressful because you just don't know if you're going to get cut or like what classroom you're going to have, if any. And so went to graduate school, pursued a dual degree master's program that got me my MBA as well as a arts management Master's of Art, and worked in nonprofits for several years. Had the opportunity then to go into local government, worked there for 4 years, and that led me into my software career, which growing up, I don't think I got a computer until I was in high school. Like it was, we were not a tech forward
Yeah.
household. And so never in my life did I think that I would be working at a software company, much less running a large department of one. And I'm just like super grateful that I've had that opportunity, and also really excited because I'm on an entrepreneurial journey as well. And so that has been newer within the last few years and something that I'm picking up and passionate about. So I think that's a little bit about my story. And I have 2 dogs and a husband. I love dogs. I would have 1,000 of them if I could, but you know, there's only so many hands that can have a leash. So
You
that's
would
a little bit about
join my
me.
daughter in that because she loves
Yeah.
dogs as well, and we have a plethora of pets here, so I really get it. And then, what brings you here today with us?
I think the question of what's next is always something as a leader that we're thinking about. Sometimes we're having conversations about it in practical terms, right? Where we're talking about the annual plans or what our marketing strategy is, and sometimes we're having inner dialogues about what's next for us as people, as leaders, as humans. And so that you're just the title of your podcast, I think really brought me in because I've been asking myself a lot of questions around what's next for me, especially as I've been 3 years into an entrepreneurial journey and kind of thinking about my executive experiences and my entrepreneurial experiences and where that lands. So I think that's what drew me into your podcast, and I'm excited to have a conversation about it.
So it's interesting. So many people are drawn into that. What's next, and it certainly mirrors mine as well. I've been on the what's next land, and then what's next land, and what's next. So it sounds like it's kind of mirrors a little bit about you as well. So when you look back, I'm really curious at your career from music, business analyst to president level leadership. Were any one or two moments that really shaped your path moving forward? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think of two things in particular. So one I'll talk about from my kind of software and like executive experience, and I had the opportunity when I was asked to take over the group in 2021 the conversation with the two former owners of the company, and they were offering me the position and just saying I'd been on the leadership team as a vice president for several years before that, and I said, why me, right? We have five very talented vice presidents on this team, and what is it that you see in me, that you want to kind of put your legacy in my
Great
hands, right? It's
question.
a
Yeah.
big thing. And they both looked at me and kind of looked at each other and said, Crystal, a lot of leaders are smart, but not a lot of leaders have the ability to see the future and work toward it in a way that you do, and with compassion, with humanity, and with authenticity. I think that, and I should contextualize that these are two men, and obviously I'm a young female, and and, and they said, we've always saw something special in you, and
Oh,
we look forward to voting for you for whatever you do in your future. So that it's kind of stopped me in my tracks to see, these two men who I had idolized, right? Really seeing so much in me, in my ability to galvanize a team, to see a vision and actually move it forward. And I think that that's a difference maker as a leader. Is a lot of people can be given a vision and move it forward. A lot of people can have a vision and not know how to move it forward. And what they saw in me and my skill set was the ability to do both. And that has been something that I've really looked for other leaders, who have that ability to be able to raise them up. So that's been really important. I'll pause.
I want to anchor. Thank you. That's a great. I just love what you said, and I want to anchor the compassion piece. Because as leaders, I think sometimes that's missed or lost, or, it's all about the do, all about the outcomes. But you had leaders that saw that in you. And that's, to me, rare, unusual. Now, I wanted to kind of turn a little bit. Have you seen that in others and brought others up? And what was that experience like?
Yeah. So there's a quote that says, the only role of a leader is to grow other leaders. Right. I think that sometimes in leadership we think, it's our responsibility to be all end all, to do everything, to own all the tasks, to be the face, and we forget that what our role really is to hold emotional space and create other leaders and see leadership in other people. And that is one thing that I'm particularly proud of as my leadership legacy, is finding compassionate, intelligent, driven humans and raising them up. There's been many promotions under me that, people have just been so grateful. And one thing in particular that I think is also specific, that I was very intentional about raising female leaders as well, and many women in the company. Working in software, it is few and far between
Yeah.
that we have female leaders, female executives, and I can't tell you how many people on the teams have reached out to me and just said, this is one of the reasons I want to work for the company. Now, men and women, right? Men and women have said that, because
That's
having
wonderful.
a female leader and seeing that I'm willing to invest in men and women in leadership is, I think, something that's particularly unifying, and unique. And I think a lot about, I was actually just thinking about this today, that the generation of CEOs and presidents and CROs, et cetera, that I'm faced with today, right? I'm in my
Mm-hmm.
40s, early 40s, and many of them, are in their 60s, mid to
Yeah.
late 60s, right?
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
the workforce that they started with was in the 80s, where they started their careers, right? And in the 80s, we had such a different thought
Totally
process
different.
around what it meant to be a
Yeah.
leader,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that the idea that if you are a well liked leader, you are doing something wrong. That in order to be effective at your role, you have to have this kind of like general fear and untouchability and lack of accessibility and lack of humanity. And that has never been That has never been me. It's not who I am. It's not who I know how to be. And I refuse to kind of let corporate America tell me that that is how I should be. And I think it's created space for other people to see that and to have it mirrored for them of a different way of being. And I think that there's a new generation, millennials learning in the workforce, Gen Zs coming up into the workforce and wanting that humanity, wanting connection, wanting authenticity and leadership. And it's not something that you have everywhere. And so that's something that
No,
I'm really cognizant of.
no, I love that. And again, I love to anchor things because compassionate leadership and humane leadership is part about the what's next for me and being in environments that have more of that fear-based leadership and, men driven, that male club. And, again, I don't think that's sustainable. And that's partly why I'm here and why you're here. But how do we kind of share that with men and have it be okay and have it be safe to have that compassionate forefront leadership and empathy. I mean, compassion and empathy to me go hand in hand. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yes. So one thing I've been doing with my team for years is doing a leadership book club. So every quarter, all my vice presidents and I read a leadership book and we talk about it. And then we share those outcomes with the entire group. We say like, hey, this is the book we read. This is what we think about it. This is like a main takeaway that we've had. And we have a lot of conversations. Adam Grant's Think Again. We just recently read Kim Scott's book and talking about compassion, right? And talking about clarity and being open as a leader and sharing feelings and being vulnerable and the emotional tax that it takes to be an executive, to be a manager of any people, because what we do is first and foremost to have to emotionally regulate ourselves, hold
Absolutely.
space to emotionally regulate other people. And that's
Absolutely.
a conversation that I had never seen in a book until I read Kim Scott's book.
Mm.
And that I think is really important to have conversations with men leaders and female leaders about and to share. And so I don't have a perfect formula, but I think having the conversation is the first thing, right? And finding material that allows you to open those forums in safe ways without being threatening or making it seem like I definitely consider myself a feminist, but I also am a big fan of men and have men and women on my team and believe
Yeah.
that it takes all kinds of kinds, right? We need everybody.
We need everybody, and that conversation is the first step. So it's so important, to your point, to have those conversations. But I think it also takes to create those safe space. You said, create the space for, and that's maybe a term that maybe some listeners don't know about. And there's a lot of coaching models that teach that. But in your mind, what does that mean to hold a space? What does that mean?
I think, and you're right, this is such a popular term, right, that we don't think about all that often, but holding space to me is allowing a one-on-one conversation or a group conversation where we are doing more listening than talking, and that you are honoring whatever the emotion is that comes up, right? You're not saying, allowing people to get emotional, right? So often in business, it's like, don't be emotional. And
Sure, sure, sure,
especially,
sure,
gosh,
sure, sure, sure.
especially female, right? Like,
Women,
don't,
yeah, exactly.
you
You're
know,
too
I
sensitive or any of that. Yeah.
right. Like, which I think is wild because I think we forget as a society that often when women in business are crying, it's likely because they're frustrated or voiceless, not because they're actually sad. And that anger typically is the emotion that we see in business, and it's completely acceptable, right? Like that is also an emotion. It is just one that we have normalized and accepted as part of conversations, but holding space for all kinds of emotion and saying things in conversations like, hey, I can see that this might be challenging. I'm a challenging conversation for you. Asking questions like, do you want feedback on this or do you just want to vent? Asking questions like, do you feel ready to accept this feedback at this time, or do you need some time to process what you're talking through, and allowing space for your ideas to not be the best ones, right? Like I think that as a
Right.
leader,
I hate that.
I know, it sucks,
Yeah.
but
It's
it's
true.
true.
It's true.
And
No,
we
it's
have a
true.
team for a reason. And I think all of those things create the ability to hold space, and also just acknowledging that you made a mistake, right? Like
So powerful.
I have made many, many mistakes. I make them every day. And being able to acknowledge that, not just privately to one person, but publicly to a whole group of people, is a way that you start to show and create space, because you show that you're a human too, right? And having that
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. Being that human, being that it's okay that you don't know everything and that you people on my team may know more than I do in certain areas, and that's okay. I don't know it all. But the other thing that you pointed to, which I think is essential for holding space, is being present and being able to shut down your own brain chatter so you're really fully present with someone. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts we can give to our teams, our partners, to whomever, because that does allow for them to feel, to vent, to do whatever. And those powerful questions too are really important. What do you need right now, Crystal? Or what can I do? Or you know I'll just sit here with you, whatever it is. But those powerful questions, really asking what they need. And that's also not very well versed in our leadership world today. So being present, asking those powerful questions to really get people to trust each other and you, and as you said, open up the space, and that authenticity really comes with that. So love what you said, and so powerful, so powerful. So obviously, you're not always right, and that's not good, bad, or indifferent. It's okay to be vulnerable, but anything that sticks out from the lessons learned, like, oh gosh, I really got it this time, or anything like that.
Yeah. Let me just sit and process on that for just a
Yeah,
minute. I have like probably three or four stories coming up for
that's
me,
fine.
but
Yeah.
what here's I think one that really has sat with me for a long time. Um, at the beginning of COVID, we had just gone remote, and I do quarterly updates with my team, right? Every quarter, do a meeting, talk about what happened the previous quarter, what we're doing the next quarter, celebrate some wins, talk about metrics, all the things, right? And one thing that we always did was welcome all the new people and congratulations to everybody with the promotions, right? Pretty standard stuff. And it was my first one, and as the leader, right? So this
Hmm.
was like, okay, like big
That's big
scary thing.
stuff. Yeah, big
Right.
stuff.
And I had been doing it, as a partial, and this was my first one on the stage. And I was reading off the names, and there was a lot of you know, non-standard, I would say,
Yeah, yeah,
foreign names,
yeah,
right? Names that
yeah,
were hard for me to personally pronounce,
yeah.
and I just absolutely butchered them. And I was embarrassed, of course, because I was stammering on my words and I had been prepared, and I just completely butchered these names. And I felt terrible in it, and I kind of lost my footing. And after the meeting, somebody said to me privately, that, she's like, I really respect you. And I wanted to give you this feedback that if all of those people would have been white people that had standard American standard names, John Smith, Judy Bloom, right? You would have not had an issue, and I wish that you would have taken a moment to prepare or ask them how to pronounce their names. And I said, "Wow, like you're so right? Like it was
Thank you.
such a
Thank you. Yeah,
small
yeah,
moment. And what I could
yeah.
have done is ignored it and said, oh, well, she's just being sensitive or whatever, right? What I chose to do instead was send a public apology to the entire company and said, look, I'm new in this role, and we're going to make mistakes, right? And there's going to be moments that are going to feel embarrassing, and we're all going to do these things, and we're all learning together. And I want you all to know, if I butchered your name, I did not do it because I don't think you're insignificant, right? And I should have given
Very
you
powerful.
the honor of this, and sent this email to the company, and turned it into a moment of vulnerability and a lesson of what it looks like, right? To stand up and say like, hey, this didn't go well, and I acknowledge that. Um, and that sat with me for so long because it wasn't just about the names, right? It's never just about the name.
No, but talk about role model vulnerability in this open. That's talk about opening up the space and just gaining trust just in that instance. That's so powerful, Crystal. I love that. Yeah. Now, have you ever had to advocate for yourself in a way that might have felt uncomfortable but necessary?
Oh, girl.
I
I know
I
you know the
I
answer,
know.
right?
I'm just
Um,
because there's
yeah,
going to be a lot of women watching, so I just
yeah. So,
not just women.
2.5 years ago, I was 2.5 years into this role, right? And had an opportunity to move to a different company. And I was really questioning it. I was going through the interview process. They were going to offer me a lot more money than I was making. I knew I was underpaid, for what I was doing as
Mm-hmm.
compared to other leaders. And I was really nervous though, because the question is always like, hey, if you ask for more, what's your value really, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then they're just going to know that you're or think that you're looking, and always think about whether or not they should cut you, they should keep you, whatever. Like that's always a constant. And I had a conversation with my boss, and I said, I did not seek this out. I had a recruiter contact me. It's a very specific role with a very specific skill set, and here's the salary that they're offering, and I don't expect you to be able to match it, but I wanted to give you the information, right? And that was really hard, even as an executive, even though I coach people on how to negotiate their own salaries, right? When you do it for yourself, it still feels scary. And you still, especially as a woman leader, we question our worth, we question our value, we want to be quiet, we want to make things easy because it's already hard enough to be in the rooms and to be taken seriously. Um, and and that I was stronger. I came out of it and didn't get everything, which I didn't never expected, but was able to get a raise to a place that felt a lot more equitable for the
Good.
role that I
Congrats.
was in, and it's helped me to also help other people in their negotiations, in those conversations, and to have that experience where I didn't want to share this information. I didn't want to, I didn't think I even wanted to leave the company. But, money is money. And just like I would tell anybody that's leaving, if I can't match this, I don't blame you, right? Like
Yeah,
that
exactly.
this is for you and your family. And I think that that's something that's really important, that companies, businesses, especially in corporate America, they will not think twice about cutting you. So don't think twice about advocating for yourself.
It's yeah, that avocation, and for you, you were heard, and I just want that to be another underline, another anchor is being heard, and they obviously executed at least parts of what you asked for. So being heard, that's kind of a theme that we've talked about throughout today. I want to leave our listeners with maybe one thing, but when you think about what's next for leaders, we talked, compassion and being heard and opening up the space or holding the space. What capabilities do you think really matter most for what's next for our leaders? What's next?
For me, it's emotional regulation, that you have to put in the work for yourself as a leader to be able to, in any situation on any given day, you do not know when a team member is going to call you and they have a partner that has cancer, or their dog just died, or they got into a car accident, or they're quitting, or who knows, right? Or a big deal just went through. These things happen every day. And we have to create enough space and enough emotional resilience in ourselves as leaders to be able to pause, put our feelings aside, because maybe we got into an accident this morning and our coffee spilled on our shirt and our project isn't going well, whatever it is, right? We have to be able to put that aside and hold space and listen with humility and humanity in those moments. And that is a skill that we have to learn. And in order to do it, you have to have something else outside of your job that allows you to stay human and stay in your person. And so whatever it is, if it's making your own cup of coffee every morning, if it's taking a bath, if it's doing yoga, if it's going for a walk, if it's petting your dog, before you leave the house every day, it doesn't matter. Find that thing that brings you joy and that centers you down as a leader, because you never know when you're going to need it.
Gosh, that self-care, that bringing yourself joy. You're right. If you don't have that, it's really hard then to come to work and really give it your all and, be present for others. So, gosh, I love this conversation. It just reminds me of how much the what's next is often being curious. It's having those conversations, staying open, building that trust so much that you've done, and then, allowing yourself to step into that next level of leadership. So thank you so much for anyone joining us today that wants to hop into the next step of change with wisdom and compassion. Certainly reach out to me via LinkedIn or What's Next podcast. Crystal, what a joy. What a great conversation. I enjoyed it so much. So thank you, and take good care of yourself.
Thank you, Lori. Thanks for having me.
Yep, you're welcome. Take good care. Bye-bye.